Our goal is to acquire companies and not change them. We're not forcing a franchise model like a McDonald's where everything is the same no matter where you go. That doesn't appeal to me. Being able to keep the local culture that you have built at your branch and you run the day-to-day the way you have, your employees know you, the management, all that stays the same. And from the back end, NPP is there to support that branch, right, and to help them achieve these goals. It's a win-win for the employees, the sellers, the customers, and the company.
This is episode 161 with Augusto, Eddie, and Hal of National Pool Partners. Enjoy!
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming down to the studio and being with us. Can you introduce yourselves and what your role is at National Pool Partners?
Sure. My name is Augusto Titarelli. I'm CEO.
My name's Eddie Skehan, Vice President of Operational Excellence.
And my name is Hal Denbar, and I'm going to be President of Texas.
Very good. Well, we're going to jump into kind of all your backgrounds and how you got into NPP. But first, Augusto, can you share with us kind of the NPP origin story and how you became involved?
Sure. The idea behind NPP started in March of 2020. One of our founders, Matt Stevenson, recently after he left Terminix, was doing a lot of research in the home services space. And he was looking for industries that had potential, talent, ability to grow value, and resilience, right? We're in the middle of this pandemic, and some industries were tanking, some industries were showing that they had a lot of resilience. And throughout that research, pool service kept coming up as a very strong industry. It had the talent, had creative people, had the resilience. Started looking more into that. It's a $6 billion market that has tremendous potential for us to unlock value. And Matt called me and said, "Hey, Augusto, this is a really interesting industry, and you and I have seen this in scale. If we could bring scale and resources that we've seen in other industries to pool, this could be a really, really interesting sector where we can do a lot of good for the people that are in the industry, for the customers, for the investors. Would you be willing to do that?" Right. So that's how we kind of came into it, and we needed three things. Right. We needed capital. We had the experience in, we were doing 35,000 services a day, so we know what this could be like. But we needed visionaries from the pool industry, right? So at that moment, we started hunting for people that were really unique in the industry. And that's how we, came across Hal and Eddie and Chad, because they had a very unique proposition. They had built incredible company cultures that could serve as a platform for us to do, right? So we set out to do acquisitions that could bring these platforms to the fold of NPP, organize them as a one entity, still with their brand. So we're not trying to go to the market as NPP. We're respecting what these brands are. And today we amassed about 10,000 pools. We're a $25 million company already. So that's how we were born.
Very cool. And what was your background before all this?
So I ran all operations for Terminix. I've been in home services about 20 years. I ran operations in ADT, alarm monitoring. For 5 years, I ran Terminix. We had 250 branches across the U.S. And I really have a passion for home services. I think it requires special people to be in that sector. Someone that can actually solve problems for customers, but also understand what it is to serve. And that's a passion of mine. So I always decided that was the one thing I was going to pursue, and that's why I'm here.
I'll have to say Terminix has one of the coolest brands of all time. Like for a service company,
It does.
I mean, I just see the trucker being on the website. When we had our service company, you're just looking at kind of what other people do. But just by looking at their stuff, I'm like, damn, I just want to use them just because, I don't know. I want to see that truck pull up at my house. I don't really know how good they actually do, but the brand is exceptional.
The brand was very, very strong, right? And there's a huge responsibility when you become a very large organization, such as, we were talking about $1.7 billion of service in one single company. I think some of the lessons we learned with that is that you can have that level of respect by building local brands. So when we designed the strategy for NPP, one of the things we were trying to say, hey, how can we get that pool by selecting brands that are local and feel local and that people respect because they have this direct relationship with it. Because even though Terminix was a great brand, when customers have problems, they had this distance from that brand. And that's something that for NPP we're trying to provide. That's why NPP is not a customer-facing brand. We're trying to make sure NPP is represented through the companies that customers know, that technicians know, that technicians have vested their own identity in. Brand carries all that weight with it, right? So our role in NPP is to build on those things, take those legacies and make them stronger. So it's better for the customers, better for the employees, and ultimately better for NPP.
Yeah, that's super cool and very unique. I've never seen anybody do that.
It's possible today, it's more than was like 10 years ago, because you have so much technology that allows you to run a lot of stuff in the background that supports the front line. One of the lessons we learned in service over the 20 years is, hey, you have to exist to support the front line. That's your only mission. If you're not there to actually help your tech do their work well and know everything he or she need to know to do that well, you have no reason being here, right? And technology today, fortunately, actually allows you to do that. You don't have to have a single branch to do that, a single brand. You can actually have these strong local brands that benefit from all this common core that sits behind, but actually act very locally. That creates tremendous intimacy between customer and these brands, which allow this thing to be continuous, which allows sustainability in the whole process, which is ultimately what you want.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. We appreciate it. Now, Eddie and Hal, you kind of both had well-established businesses. You know, what would bring you to the decision to get involved with NPP? Eddie, let's start with you and kind of, can you share a little bit about your business and what your journey with NPP?
Sure. So I've been in the business for a little over 30 years. Started with the company as a labor, started out doing construction. And at the time, we didn't offer a pool service. We were strictly focused on the constructing of the pools. At some point, we offered the pool service because we were referring our customers out to these other service companies. They weren't providing a very good product, and in return, the customers would call us back. So it put us in a real slippery slope, if you will, because of that dynamic. So the company I work for started a pool service business, and we started with one pool, just like a lot of people do. And most of our growth was organic. And over the years, the company that I worked for was repurchased by a couple other companies. And I worked for that company until I bought the business. We bought it about 7 years ago, my wife and I did. We were right at 4,000 pools on weekly service. And we just got to a point, the way I told my employees when I explained to them what we were doing and why we were selling, what really resonated with me to explain to them. Because at first I felt like I was betraying my employees by selling, right? I really did. We've got employees that they weren't my employees per se for that 20 years because I didn't own the company, but we had worked together for 20 years. So you have that work relationship, but you also have a personal relationship, right? I know their families. I know their kids. They know my kids. They know my wife. All that goes into what makes that decision. Where I was wrestling with it was, how can I justify selling? We had gotten to a point to where we just couldn't get to that next level. So I was going into the office and it just felt like you were beating your head against the wall, right? COVID happened. So I stayed at home, was doing some homeschooling. And when I did that, it just let me really reevaluate my company. And what we had always tried to do was three things. One is we always made decisions on what was best for the employees, right? We have always valued employees from day one. And it doesn't matter if you just started today or if you've been with me 15 years, everybody has a critical role in the company and its success. So the problem that I was seeing over this time, especially when you start getting employees with seniority, the pool service industry, when somebody gets hired on, whether they're hired on as a pool tech or a repair tech, most companies, that's where they stay, right? They become stagnant. They're always a pool technician. Or at least in my experience, that's what happens. And a lot of that I would take responsibility for not being forward thinking enough to be able to generate a career path, right? I wanted to, before NPP, wanted to really elevate the standard of living and the respect that my employees get, not only from other industries, but more importantly from the customer. Customers, if your air conditioner goes down, the AC guy comes out. It doesn't matter if he charges you $200 or $300, right? He's there for 30 minutes. He's God because it's burning hot. A lot of homeowners do not understand what these technicians go through on a daily basis. The heat, the cold, the chemicals. And it's not just, some homeowners have that picture in their head that the pool guy or pool girl, right, is just there to skim the pool and they're gone. They have no idea the amount of training and calculations that they're making on the fly that vary from pool to pool. And then you got all the different equipment. So there's a lot of stuff there, and we always tried to do what we could to elevate our standard of living for the employees. We just couldn't get there. We were a fairly large company, but we had basically 6 or 7 softwares, right? They were duct taped together because that's what it took to run the company. Trying to find a one software that would do absolutely everything for us was impossible, or it was out of our reach. And when I mean out of our reach, it's not like it's available, right? We would have to invest severe amount of capital to get it built for us. So those are the 2 critical things that when I was approached by NPP and we started talking, and before the conversations got very in depth, the 3 things that I wanted to focus on was to make sure that we were aligned, right? There's lots of companies out there, lots of private individuals that have got money that they're pumping in, buying and consolidating various different companies in all different spaces. But the only reason I partnered with NPP is because we were aligned on the value for the employees, the customers, and the company. It has to be all 3. If you don't have those 3 together, it's not going to work. So, like I say, from the very first meeting that I had with NPP, meeting with Augusto and Matt Stevenson, it was a win-win from the very beginning.
Was selling something you ever thought about even doing?
No, selling was never on the radar. I always had this vision. My employees would ask me all the time, how big do you want to get? How big are we going to take this? And I always said, well, we'll start with Florida and then we'll go from there. Never ever dreamed of selling. COVID helped me make that decision because I was able to back away from the business. Luckily, I had great leadership, had wonderful employees. So they were running that company, and being able to sit back and look at where are we at now? Where do we want to go? How are we going to elevate our employees? And it was just the perfect timing for that to happen, me to be home with a clear mind, and then get approached from this team at NPP. And the other thing that sold me on NPP too was the fact that their goal was to acquire companies and not change them. We're not forcing a franchise model like a McDonald's where everything is the same no matter where you go. That doesn't appeal to me. Being able to keep the local culture that you have built at your branch and you run the day-to-day the way you have, your employees know you, the management, all that stays the same. And from the back end, NPP is there to support that branch, right, and to help them achieve these goals. It's a win-win for the employees, the sellers, the customers, and the company.
That's a great story. I'm curious, Augusto, when you come into a new industry, just like the swimming pool industry, is it hard to empathize with a new company or just a new industry altogether when we're talking about swimming pools, not anything else?
So I guess every time you step into something new, I think the first thing I think of is you have to have enough humility to actually listen, right? And try to really understand what people do. You have to walk 1,000 steps in somebody else's shoes to understand what it is, right? So as Eddie said, we have this aspiration coming from other places that we can have the software that does everything. We can have all these benefits. And that's great because it marks a point where you want to get to. But how you get there requires you to actually go and understand and listen very carefully. One of the things that we really made a point of is having a systemic process to listen to the front line. Understanding what our techs go through, what our managers go through. It's critical for us to create a list of to-dos so that when we build software or we hire benefits, we're doing that in their name. And that's very, very important. But that doesn't happen just by happenstance. You really have to structure it. So one of the things we do is we have, for example, a monthly cadence with our leadership where we actually are the ones telling them what's going on with the business. but also asking questions. Hey, what's working and what's not working? So I'll tell you, the very first two meetings, first meeting, we told them the story. Second meeting, they came up with a list. Hey, guys, all these things you're saying, for them to happen, they need to go this direction, not this where you're taking, right? And if at that point management doesn't have the humility to actually listen and understand that that's the input you need, it's difficult to empathize because you don't really know what to empathize to, right? One of the disciplines we had in my previous job was all management, regardless of position, all the way to CEO, actually board, all the way to directorship level, mandatorily had to do a full day in the field with a tech in one of the branches. So we did that every month. And I'll tell you, the things we learned when you see people doing what you designed in the office, but with no consideration for sometimes for what they actually, how they're going to do that in the field. It was great lessons. And at that moment, you have to have the fortitude to say, to go back, because I made a mistake here, I'm going to go actually do it that way, right? I had some great stories. We rolled out a piece of software that was allowing techs to print stuff in their trucks. And then one day I went out with a truck, with a tech, and he's walking back and forth to his truck to get this thing printing. And I said, well, why are you doing that? It's taking a lot of time. He says, well, because you forgot that the way I connect to the printer is through Bluetooth. And every time I go to the house, the Bluetooth connection, breaks up. Now I have another 5 minutes to reconnect. So every time I'm going to my truck, I have to reconnect. So I'm reconnecting 5 times to be able to do my job, which we never thought of because we're sitting in the office. Unless you're actually there in the field with the techs, you don't know what you don't know, right? So that's a discipline that we have had. And when we looked for the companies to acquire, we were looking for companies that had that proximity, people that understood what it is to do the work. And as we design, for example, we're specifying our software now, that's people that actually do it. They're telling us, this is not going to work, that's going to work, this is where we need to go. Because that's the best way to truly empathize, right? You have to know, you have to have the humility to accept what you thought was your vision, but that's actually not correct. And then work for the people to solve that problem for them. As I said at the beginning, NPP exists for nothing else than to make life in the field viable, right? That's the strength. That's where value is going to come from. So we all have this north where we're working for our teams, right? And you can't do that if you don't actually do the work yourself, right? So I've been trying to learn. COVID has been a little bit of an obstacle because we couldn't have that proximity. But our VP of HR, who actually sits in Milwaukee, came down to do the launch at Eddie's. And obviously, since you can do right along, you do drive behind right now. Right? So she actually drove behind some of our techs just for her as a VP of HR to understand what it is to do that service for that tech that day in Florida, right? So that's going to be part of our discipline to actually help us maintain that empathy and that humility that actually drives true value for us.
I love that. Very well said.
Yeah. So Hal, our audience is probably more familiar with you than anybody here, but for those that don't know, maybe can you share a little bit about your business and then your journey to NPP?
Yeah, absolutely. So Patriot Pool and Spa, we're about 15 years old. Well, my last semester of college, I got a job cleaning pools to learn the basics of the pool service industry. Because around that time, to me, it looked like the pool service industry was sort of ripe for professionalism that I didn't see being delivered. And so I started Patriot the week I graduated from college with one account. And I was just a single poler for 5 years. It took 5 years to be able to hire our first employee. At that point, we, in 2 years, hired 2 employees. The year after that, we hired 6, and then we started growing fairly rapidly. So we got to the point where we were servicing about 1,000 pools around the Austin area with a team of about 40 technicians. And once COVID began, for me, I'm in my late 30s. I had no intention to sell Patriot for many, many years. In my mind, this was, a theoretical maybe 20 years in the future. And the first week of April, I get a LinkedIn connection from Matt Stevenson, who's on our board. But I noticed that he was the most recent CEO of Terminex. And I was like, why is the CEO of Terminex connecting to me on LinkedIn? That's random. I usually just ignore LinkedIn requests anyway. Fortunately, this time I was paying attention. And then he sends me an email 5 minutes later introducing himself, saying, just finished running the $1.5 billion P&L at Terminex. I'm looking for my next thing. The pool industry looks cool. Looks like you're doing cool things in it. If you want to talk, here's my number. And so in my mind, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll call the CEO of Terminex. So I give him a call to see what he's thinking. And his very first question is, Hal, why is this industry never consolidated? Why is the biggest company in the U.S. roughly $15 million in an industry that's worth billions? And from there, we just had a series of phone calls, like exploring that idea. Why hasn't it happened? If it were to happen, how would we do it? What would it look like? What would we want to do differently than other industries? And so we had a series of phone calls, and at that point, he'd mentioned, I think this idea has a lot of merit, and I'm going to go look for some investment to see if investors think it has merit. And he called me back a few weeks later and had identified the investment firm that are our backers at NPP, and asked if I'd do like an interview with them and get to know them. And so hopped on Zoom, because this is the middle of COVID. Had a couple-hour meeting with the private equity firm who is investing in us. And after that meeting, it was a perfectly fine meeting. It was get to know each other, learn about sort of their firm, learn about what the vision for a company like NPP, since NPP hadn't been created yet, would be. And as soon as the phone call ended, I called Matt directly and said, Matt, I think this idea is really cool. I think it has merit. I think it's going to be successful, but I'm not your guy. I've got a really good thing going back in Austin. Good luck. And, I'll be watching from afar. And so for about a month and a half, I'd backed out. And over the course of that month and a half, I did see which I'm sure like many other pool company owners out there noticed once after COVID had begun, how many private equity inquiries were coming in through email and phone. In years past, there might have been a couple semi-serious tire kickers, but in that month and a half that I backed out of the idea of NPP, I probably had at least 10 very serious, legitimate inquiries. So it became clear this is happening to the industry. The industry's going this direction. And so fortunately, Matt called back about a month and a half later and said, we've done all the research. We have data. We know we want to move forward with this idea. Will you come advise us? And he said, the reason we're calling to ask you to advise us is because normally we'll find in an industry like this, we'll find the wise industry veteran who's built a multi-million-dollar business, sold it, and then we can bring that person in to advise us. But he's like, we can't find anybody like that in the pool service industry, because if you've built a multi-million-dollar business at that scale, there's not a market to exit. There's no way to buy it. So what we're seeing is all these owners are still running their business, whether they want to or not, until they die, and it gets passed on to their kids, whether their kids want it or not. And so, I was like, sure, I'll come on in an advisory capacity, because at this point it's clear the industry's going that way, and I might as well help try to steer where it's going, as opposed to just watching and observing and seeing what happens. So when I signed on to advise, that's when I got hooked, because for me, like the thing that always gets me really excited, like I like swimming pools. I might say I love swimming pools, but I'm not in the swimming pool industry because of swimming pools. What I've always really found enjoyment in is creating jobs and opportunity for as many people as possible. Like that's what gets me up in the morning. And so the very first exercise that we did is we started, drawing out what NPP would look like, was to create, what does a $10 million pool service branch look like? Because with their knowledge from Terminex, what they realized is sort of best practice is to build a branch up to $10 million. Because after that, it can start to get sloppy. You might start dropping balls. So I start drawing an org chart for a $10 million branch. And while I'm doing that, which is a little over 2 times the size of Patriot, the company I was running. So drawing this org chart, and I'm drawing out all these new positions and new functions, new career opportunity that's never existed in our industry within the confines of like a single location. And so I'm starting to get a little amped up and excited about what's happening. And then we start drawing out, what does area infrastructure, of people look like behind, say you have a city like Dallas, where you may have 3 or 4 branches. What does that infrastructure look like at a human level? What does the regional infrastructure of the state look like behind that? What does corporate infrastructure at a national level look like behind that? And so that's the moment I got hooked. I'm seeing this career path being created from a pool cleaner all the way to an executive that has never existed in this industry. And as I'm seeing it, I'm like, as much opportunity as I think I could create as a small business owner in Austin, Texas, I would never be capable of creating this amount of opportunity on my own. And so at that point, I was hooked. I was like, okay, let's talk about what it looks like to bring Patriot into the NPP fold. And then the final step for me, because at this point, really I had 3 hurdles. I had the idea, the execution, and the people. And the idea checked out on those initial phone calls with Matt when we were just exploring, why has this never happened? What would it look like? And the plan of execution that we drew out in terms of, what this would look like organizationally, that box was checked. The third piece for me was who's going to lead this, because I've never had a boss. I started this company, the week I graduated from college. And so at that point is when Augusto and I finally met. We'd both, I think, been sort of riding similar paths, but had not interacted to this date. And so we scheduled a 30-minute sort of get to know you phone call, because, Matt was like, Augusto's my guy. He's who's going to run this. Worked with him at Terminex. I think you're going to love him. And so a 30-minute phone call turned, I think, into about a 3-hour phone call, just riffing on how we would build a company. What would it look like? What kind of culture do we want to build? How do we want to value people? How do we want to treat our customers? And from that moment, third box was checked. Okay, idea checks out, execution checks out, people checks out, I'm in. And so that's how Patriot joined the fold of NPP.
Dude, that's an awesome story. And the first time we heard it, I was seriously like in shock. I'm like how?
I know.
How?
I was too.
I know.
I was very
It's like
shocked.
super shocked. And I feel like that's why we kind of like accepted NPP as like a new company. But like we've just got so much respect for Hal and what he did at Patriot that we're like, it must be somewhat legit, because Hal's a pretty smart dude. But I'm curious, going back to some of the first discussions you had, did you guys ever find a conclusion as to why pool companies hadn't been consolidated?
I actually don't know that we landed on a single good answer. That was part of why we just had to make this move, because it's like, how's nobody else seeing this at this point? Clearly every other thing that touches the house that has regional differences, which in my mind, like historically, that had always been a big piece of it, right? Like pool service in Arizona doesn't look like pool service in Florida. It doesn't look like pool service in Texas. But the more I, had conversations with Matt and his experience at Terminex, pest control is very similar in that manner, right? And they figured it out. Every other home service deals with geographical differences, and for some reason, we've just continued to fall under the radar. And I think a lot of the things that I know I've complained about in our industry that at trade shows, I know we've even had a beer talking about, software issues and professionalism and all these things. It started to become clear during these early conversations that like the reason we're having all these struggles as an industry is because there's been no sign of consolidation of any kind, right? Because as companies start to aggregate into larger organizations, they have to start professionalizing. They have to build software out. They have to do all these things that our industry had always lacked, because nobody had taken that first move to aggregate companies together and then build the infrastructure necessary to make that successful. That then rubs off on every other organization in the industry. And so as that was becoming clear, it was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. It's time for our industry to experience what every other home service industry has experienced for the most part.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we discuss why Hal and Eddie are most excited about offering more job opportunities that have never been available before, how NPP unleashes the passion for owners to do what they love, and how NPP's infrastructure allows management to be able to do their actual jobs. This episode of the Pool Chasers podcast is brought to you by Pentair. Pentair is dedicated to elevating the pool experience for their dealers and customers. As a leader in the pool and spa industry, Pentair brings connected, efficient, and quality products to pool owners, helping them save time, money, and effort so they can effortlessly enjoy all of life's moments that take place in the pool. Pentair's pool solutions are engineered to filter, clean, and sanitize water, while Pentair automation products like Pentair Home app make it all easy to control from anywhere. Pentair has innovated to create tools that empower pool owners to easily control their pool maintenance. Two recent solutions include the Prowler 930W robotic in-ground pool cleaner and the ChemCheck water quality monitoring system. In addition to streamlining pool maintenance routines, pool automation can help pools run more efficiently. By leveraging Pentair solutions, you can help your customers set pre-programmed schedules to automate a variety of pool maintenance operations, from pump speed and flow to water quality. So check out pentair.com/pool to explore the many ways you can help your customers spend more time enjoying their pool and less time worrying about the maintenance. For more information, click the link below in the show notes. This episode of the Pool Chasers podcast is also brought to you by Primate Pool Tools. All right, by now you've heard us talk about our friends at Primate Pool Tools, right? All their poles are made with aerospace-grade carbon fiber, which offers 10 times the strength of aluminum at half the weight. This allows you to cut through the water with ease. They have options for any level of commercial and residential maintenance with multiple models of poles to choose from, as well as an extension system that can extend the reach of any pole up to 40 feet. Primate Pool Tools continues to lead the way in carbon fiber technology by now offering stainless steel version of their flagship 2X and 3X models that are ideal for heavy vacs, as well as custom limited edition designs and brand new custom grips. All the Primate poles are handmade in the USA, come with a 1-year commercial warranty, and most importantly, top-notch customer service. Right now, you can get $20 off your order by using Pool Chasers 2021. That's Pool Chasers 2021 at checkout. And make sure to listen to episode 104 or click the link below for more information.
I think the future for the pool industry is extremely bright. I think even like our kids coming up, being around pools might be more entertaining, even down to like social media. We were laughing about this the other day. I'm like, I don't know how more influencers don't want to be pool service guys or gals. You got access to every single pool 24/7. Maybe after this, because I know a lot of influencers like to listen to this. But
well, I mean, even outside of influencers, right? Like, think about just like a 21-year-old kid that's looking for what is my career going to be, and if you're trade oriented, it's going to be way cooler to be looking over a negative edge pool in Scottsdale, Arizona every week than to be sitting in an attic at 115 degrees.
Oh, yeah. And I love that because I feel like since day one when we started, it's like everybody told us and we almost had to accept that like the pool technician is just somebody in school, or it doesn't matter who they are. They're not going to stay longer than, 6 months, 12 months. If you're lucky, you'll get a year or two out of them, but it's just how it is. And it just kind of always hated that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll tell you something coming from another industry, right? The perception, I don't think people understand how complex and how intense the pool cleaning and service business is. People have literally no idea. If people knew how sophisticated this industry can be. And the other thing that people, I think, assume is that the players in the industry don't have the vision or don't have the capacity to design a future for this. Is totally untrue. People don't have the time to actually devote 100% of their time to actually carrying out their vision, and sometimes don't have the capital to do that. But in terms of what it requires, the intensity, the sophistication of the industry, it should be at par with any other type of trade. I'll give you an example. I can't think of any trade or any home service industry that serviced the whole entire customer base in a week. If you take pest control, it takes 3 months for pest control to actually touch every single customer and provide services to them. And frankly, the services that they rendered about 3 months ago are almost irrelevant to the service they're going to do today. In pool, you can't do that. You have very little room for missing. You have to do perfect work because what you do today will impact the service you're going to have to do tomorrow. If people only understood how sophisticated this industry can actually be and what it can provide in terms of value to the customers, people would have a lot more respect than I think the industry today reserves. So one of our missions is really make people recognize that, educate customers, say, hey, are you aware of how much this depends on someone doing the right work for you? And these guys that are out here, they're not just like pushing a pole. They're chemists actually taking care of the biggest organ you have in your body, which is your skin, right? So that is what this industry is about, protecting that. And I think some of the people outside the industry and potential investors hadn't tapped into this, right? And this is a source of unlocking value because if you take an industry that's difficult to run, such as it is pool, right, where you have to make sure you're seeing every customer every week and doing the proper work, that if you do it right and you find a good process to do this and you maintain the culture and the proximity with the customer, that is tremendous competitive value, right? And if you look at a lot of the people who are successful in this industry because of the relationships they have developed with their customers and what they do for their customers, that's the source of value. So as we design NPP, we want to make sure that remains the source of value. And we put support around that to make sure that continues to happen and gets more and more respect. It's a lot of what we're going to do is educate customers, share with customers information. Sometimes all it takes is really making customers understand, hey, this is what we've done for you, right? Sometimes customers don't. And if customers don't know how to assess a value, they use proxies, right? In pest control, the proxy they used was, did I take the cobwebs down from the ceiling? I could have done a perfect work around the house, but if the cobweb is there, it's the things you didn't show up. Pool has similar things. You can do tremendous work in there, but if they see a leaf on the pool, it's like, oh, the guy wasn't here, right? So how do you create a process in which customers partake into what you're doing for them and understand that? That is, I think, the process going to help the industry gain respect and ultimately consolidate in a good way. Consolidation has, for this industry, specific value that when you have a critical mass, you can devote capital and time of people to solve these problems that we learned from the frontliners. So, for example, Hal had developed tremendous marketing in his company. That's why he's well known. And he did that using 10, 15% of his time, because the other 85% of the time he's managing it. So imagine if I take Hal and give 100% of his time to marketing. What can he do for the industry? The same thing with Eddie in operations, right? So that's what we're trying to do when you aggregate a certain amount of businesses. Now you can devote talent, and the vision that is latent, that's there already, now finds a way to actually fly free and actually execute. So that's what we're very hopeful this will do.
Yeah. I mean, what are some of the things that you're most excited about doing within, your companies?
For me, it's all about people. Like I said, that is 100% the reason I'm sitting in this chair right now is a employee of National Pool Partners. Because I saw the opportunity that we can create, for people in this industry, and as a result, what that will do for the industry as a whole. All of my excitement about this is the foundation is people. It comes back to opportunity that we can create for people.
Yeah, and I agree with that. All about career choices, career tracks, showing somebody that, instead of looking at this as a seasonal job or a 1-year fill-in job or something, show them the value that's actually here, and that you can make a real good living at this, right? And being able to show them without any question, this is where you are right now, this is where you can go. From top to bottom, bottom top, wherever you want to go. And the other thing too that it came up today in an announcement we were doing earlier was the fact that a lot of people, well, I use the word a lot, and that may not be true, but anyway, some people want to relocate, right? They may like the job that they do, but they want to relocate somewhere else. That has never been in the pool industry, right? Mm-hmm. So now, being that we're going to be in multiple states, we had somebody today want to know if they could be able to possibly transfer to another state that we operate in. I mean, how wonderful is that you're not only are you affecting their living as a whole, right? But you're also affecting the family just by offering them more opportunities. And that's never been there before.
And it's not just at the specifics of the job too. Like with what Eddie's saying, it's somebody may want to move from Austin to Phoenix, and not only are they sure there's a job waiting for them, but they don't have to worry about renewing benefits. Their benefits can move. A 401k can move. It's allowing them flexibility in life without completely shaking up their life. Mm-hmm. And it also stretches beyond active career, as far as the opportunity that I think this is creating for our industry. That wise industry veteran that I mentioned earlier, right? That theoretically in other industries has been retired and is a free agent and can consult and do other things with their life. We're also presenting that opportunity to this industry. If you've built a something of substance and an impressive business, like, you can get rewarded for that financially now in a way that you wouldn't have been able to without consolidation in this industry.
Mm-hmm. So what does this mean exactly for you, Hal? Maybe you could walk us through what things used to look like and what they, look like now, or what you want to see in the future.
Yeah, at its simplest level, as a business owner, there might be 15 to 20% of your daily stuff that you really love, right? That's the stuff you're excited about. And the rest is just crap you got to deal with as a business owner, right? In my mind, HR, I hate HR. I brought my wife into the company just to take it off my plate because I hated it so much, right? In this sort of new stage, now that I'm a member of NPP, I'm getting to devote my time to the things that I'm good at and that I get me excited to go to work every day in a more focused manner, right? Because this large organization presents that flexibility where we have, the workload is divided with specialists who are really good at the things they do and love the things they do. Jessica, who's our VP of HR, loves HR, right? So there's somebody that gets up every morning wanting to do HR, and that's amazing because it's the last thing I want to do, right? In our early meetings as a leadership team here at NPP, I was struck by the fact that Eddie is just making nonstop lists. As we're discussing things, he's making lists in detail of all these things that can happen. That's not my skill set. I wish I could do that, but I can't. Like, I can be creative and get people to introduce people to each other, make connections. Like, those are things I'm really good at. Detailed lists, not my forte, right? So like, it's been great being able to share the workload with people who want to do the things that you may not necessarily be designed to do because it's a larger organization.
Yeah, it seems like it would really help because it seems like you as a person can kind of be more within the company and maybe lean on NPP for certain things where it's like, hey, man, we got to shape up, NPP, by the HR guidelines, do things a little bit differently. And I'm not saying that's how it is because I don't really know the ins and outs of the business, but I know in us running a service business, that would be extremely helpful where it's like, I'm more like one of you and I'm just helping. I don't have to worry about a lot of these other things, but I can warn you and lean on, NPP. I would think that would be extremely helpful, leaning in different ways as well if you need help.
It is precisely the vision, right? So, for example, one of the things that takes a lot of time is payroll. So, as an owner, a lot of people, because of the sensitivity of information, are doing payroll themselves. I find a lot of owners that I talk to, I'm running payroll, and I'm sorry, I got to cut off because I got to go do payroll and you can't fail that one. You can't tell an employee, I didn't have time to run your payroll on Sunday, so you're not going to get paid. So that's one of the centralized processes we're setting up. One organization that does payroll for everyone. You send your information, send your hours, and it's taken care of. We're putting an app in every single tech phone that they can see when they're going to get paid, how much they've got paid, if they need something from HR, it flows through that. Precisely what you're doing. Try to be invisible, but very helpful in the background. That's the mission of NPP. So unleashing the power of these guys to actually focus on the things that they know can be achieved and they are passionate about. Passion is going to drive this industry, right? But when passion is subject to the bureaucracy of having to get things done right, passion kind of gets smothered, right? So if you create processes in the background, be it by software, by systems, or by just people that understand and how to do that, like Jessica, she's a pro at that. She set up all the system. Now these guys don't have to worry about it. And by the way, now we don't have 5 different ways of paying people, whereas there's only one IRS in this country. Always exact, the requirements exactly the same. So by doing that, by putting those resources in the background for the leaders to be able to operate, I can tell you right now, as is, the amount of creativity that we have unleashed into the industry has been tremendous. Right, the time Hal has devoted to actually identify people that think like us and bring them to the fold has been tremendous. What Eddie brought in terms of technology already, just the research around how can we get trucks to be safer? That's safety is a basic right of our employees. How can we use technology to do that? That was something that was being done on the sideways at the time that we had, and frankly, I couldn't spend much money on that. Now we can do that, and someone is doing that for the whole company. That's something that's part of this common core that would work everywhere. So we're building in the background all these supporting services so people can actually focus on what really matters, which is that relationship, that intimacy with the customers, making sure the techs have the resources to do what they did so they can develop great relationships, right? And that is a fundamental focus for us. It's not a lack of vision that the reason why this industry hasn't consolidated. The vision is there. People didn't have the time. People didn't have the capital. And we're happy that we can provide that and let them actually run with these ideas because there's incredible ideas.
Yeah, and I would even add to that it goes even a level deeper than that, right? So it's not just at the top. If you take our leadership at our branches, right, that handle payroll, they handle HR, they handle benefits, whatever that case may be, right? All of that takes up a lot of time, but it's a small amount of time in a week. That makes sense? So they're not really focused on those particular items to where we're all in, but it falls under their job. Being able to remove those roadblocks is what I would call them, right? And we have a specialist at NPP that handles nothing but that. They eat it, they live it, they breathe it, right? That frees up even lower level management and leadership to be able to do what they really need to do, right? Because we have leadership that are doing things like that are so much more, they offer so much more potential, right? So once all this gets operating, it's leadership all the way down. And in return, let's don't just stop at leadership, right? Not everybody wants a leadership role. Some people don't, and that's fine. The thing that I want to point out there is whenever we can improve any core area of a company, whether it's leadership or the janitor or whatever, right? That has trickle-down effects that affects everybody else, right? So we're starting wherever, and when we get done, it'll make a full circle, and that's very important.
And Greg, to clarify too on sort of a day in the life, because Eddie made me think at the branch level, one of the coolest things during the whole process was 30 days or so from the close of the sale of Patriot and transition into NPP. I had to have a sit down with Nathan, who was my operations manager at Patriot, because, this new role for me was going to pull me out of Patriot, right? I'm still, as the leader of our Texas organization, I'm there to support Patriot, but I'm not going to be at Patriot every day anymore, because now my focus is moving on to scaling this business at a state and national level. And so you took him out to lunch, and had to lay it on him. Here's what's going on. In 30 days, the world is changing. Are you in or are you out? Because it was very vital to us as an organization to know if he was, to make sure he was in, because it was going to be for the continuity of Patriot. We needed his steady leadership, and he was super excited about the opportunity, the idea. And so one of the coolest parts was being able to just hand him the keys and be like, Patriot's your baby now. It's not mine anymore. Patriot's yours to run. And it's been fun watching him, take that on his shoulders and learn and master running that as his own branch.
That's got to be such a cool feeling.
Yeah,
I was curious right before you said that, like, what do your titles change to within the company?
So Eddie and I are both founding partners of NPP, and so is Chad Nickel here in Phoenix. We actually announced his company today.
Right now.
Yeah. Surprise, Chad. And so we're founding partners in the business, because, from early on, we've helped sort of shape the idea. And then, of course, Augusto and Matt, the most important part of this founding team, because they're operationally putting all this together. We wouldn't be here without them. So
we're kind of like distant cousins, because Aquaman has some of our old pools. Kind of like it. We're not blood, but
Great people. We had the announcement this morning. It is. I think this is the company that got the most number of questions from the technicians directly. Hey, what's going to happen? It was great. There was a genuine excitement in that room there. So I enjoyed it. I think it's going to be a great future for this partnership. So
we're going to take another short break. When we get back, we discuss why technicians are the true front lines and why they are so critical, the importance of keeping the knowledge learned within the trade, and NPP's overall goal of elevating the industry. This episode of the Pool Chasers podcast is brought to you by CCH. CCH is your pool and spa chlorination solutions for backyards, hotels, apartments, condos, and athletic facilities. Their lineup of cyanuric-free disinfection solutions help bathers enjoy a sparkling, clean pool experience. No trichlor? No problem. Research shows it can take 6 times the amount of water to keep CYA in recommended ranges using trichlor as compared to water needed to keep CCH in recommended ranges with calcium hypochlorite. With an easy load cartridge to control dosing and a drain port to prevent spills, their new CCH Endurance Feeders is easy to install and service. Using a slow-dissolved calcium hypochlorite tablet, it offers the convenience of traditional trichlor feeder systems, but with the benefits of a non-stabilized cal hypo system. It's a CYA-free, no-drip, slow-dissolve, low-maintenance alternative for residential and commercial pool chlorination. To find out more, listen to episode 153 of the podcast, visit cchpoolcare.com, or click the link below. This episode of the Pool Chasers podcast is also brought to you by PoolRx. Well, it's that time of year again. PoolRx is having their end of summer sale event. That means it's time for you to stock up. When we were running Brothers, this was one of our favorite sales of the year. We got a discount on the product, but more importantly, we were setting our pools up to be successful and reducing chemical usage, which saved us a ton of time and money. Let me tell you a little bit more about the product. PoolRx eliminates and prevents all type of algae, reduces chlorine demand, and lasts up to 6 months. With PoolRx, there is no need for phosphate removers, clarifiers, or other algicides. When using PolarX, you will see high definition water clarity. I mean, the pools just pop. Right now, you can get $15 off a 4-pack of blue units and $17.50 off a 4-pack of black units at your favorite distribution location. The sale ends September 30th, so get them while you can. If you want to find out more about the product and how it can help you reduce your chlorine usage, check out episode 142, visit PolarX.com, or click the link below.
Well, I love that you call them frontlined, because I don't think that they're called that very often, or people realize that they're frontline. And I think a common theme within this conversation is you keep coming back to the life of technician and the idea of riding along with technician and Terminix. Like that, to me, how many owners in this industry you know that go ride along with a technician, let alone once a month, well, maybe once a year, except for training, which is count because it's a brand new person that you're teaching. So how many people go right along with one of their people and still feel that day-to-day process, right? So that front line, and if you're investing in that front line, and Greg and I've always talked about, that's the hardest job in the whole industry, and people don't understand it. I mean, the builders think they're, the hardest, owners think they're the hardest, but like the technicians, they do the hardest job that none of us want to do. So the quickest thing that we always want to do is get out of the field, right? Nobody wants to clean pools. That's why it's the hardest. So investing the time that you guys are doing into the technicians is going to change every business.
It's the hardest and most important, because if nobody's cleaning pools, none of us have jobs.
Correct.
And that respect for the front line is something that I found to be critical in any services industry in general.
Mm-hmm.
Until you actually do it, you can't grasp. And at the same time, it's so useful to have that image of that job you did with the tech when we're thinking systems or you're thinking designing processes. You remember those experiences and you design, oh yeah, if I were there doing that, this would have happened. And this just makes the process more successful, not only for the tech, but also for the company. That's very important. Look, I'll tell you a story. I started in shipbuilding, right? Shipbuilding is a very, hardcore industry. And when you start in shipbuilding, the first thing they do, they make you do a double bottom inspection. Double bottom is the bottom of the ships where they put oil. And this thing is 4 feet tall. It's like an egg box with little manholes that are 12 inches wide, and you have to crawl through that, through the fumes in the dark. And if someone closes that manhole, you're there for the rest of your life. So, and the reason they do that, which people think is hazing, it's not hazing, is that if you don't do this and you can't appreciate what it is, everything that you're going to do is going to lack that perspective, right? And I did that when I was 19, and I did that when I was 21, and I had, and you get it. It's more than a rite of passage. It's a rite of understanding. It's a rite of communion. You have to have that communion with that. I have never seen a worse thing, and I've lived through a few, when the leader of a company doesn't love the business that they're in. And I've seen it. People that came from very large corporations that were experts in running things, i.e. GE, people in GE were proud to say we can run anything in the world. And I've seen people fail because they don't love what they do. And you can't love it unless you actually go and do it, right? If you take Microsoft, for example, their new leader had this whole thing about empathy. And it completely redesigned the way Microsoft works, because they're saying you have to have empathy with your customers, right? And the term frontline came from Microsoft. They're designing everything, Windows 365, all that's been designed for enablement of the front line. And that's the same thing we experience in other industries. That's what we were trying to do at Terminix. I remember that as soon as I took over, and Matt took over too. He's our founder, right? And he told me, Augusto, what do we do here to get this right? I said, Matt, we have 7,000 people that are led by 900 leaders, supervisors. And we never, ever pulled them together in 20 years to hear what they have to say. And Matt, being super fast as he is and super smart, said, Augusto, let's do that. In 2 weeks, we had 8 meetings across the U.S. with 900 techs. We grouped them in groups of 10 and asked them 4 questions. What's working? What's not working? What should we stop doing? And how can I help you? I still keep the book that I took notes on. It's 108 pages of notes from those 2 weeks. And I keep it as a trophy. Went back home and we reread the thing. The 109 pages synthesized into 10 things. It was not more than 10. 900 people are saying exactly the same 10 things. And management is going all the way that direction. And the text says, no, you got to go this way. And it was right there in front of us. And our wisdom, and that's why I kept talking about humility together with empathy, is that if you listen and you're able to, 90% of the solution is there. Now, I know which tools to use to get the effect you want, but what you want to happen, you got to tell me, right? And that's where empathy and humility play extremely importantly well together for us to get that, right? So when Eddie, for example, is our VP of Operational Excellence. So his role is to design all these things. And we're taking that such a critical role and giving to someone who's done it for 20 years. Because that empathy and that knowledge comes embedded in that position. And so the way we're defining the roles, as you were asking us, it has to do also with people's familiarity, knowledge, and ability to connect with the job at hand. Because that's the key to success. Right, I cannot bring a guy from IT from out. I can get a guy that built systems many times, but it will lack that fundamental knowledge. Right, and the other thing is, once we start doing that, how do you create a systemic way to continue to listen? Companies fail because they stop listening. Either they stop listening to their employees, they stop listening to their customers, and that's the spiral of death. Right, when you feel you're so good that you don't have to listen. Right.
Couldn't agree more, because there were so many times where, I mean, me personally, I won't speak for Ty, but you almost give up because as an owner, you are so genuine and sincere, and you really are putting your arm around these people, and they say, oh yeah, like I appreciate it, and it goes in one ear and out the other. So it's like learning to constantly do that, but not take it personal. But it kind of is. It's a really weird balance as being an owner in just trying to stay focused that everybody is watching you. You just be a good person. And if it doesn't work out for that one person, so be it. But everybody's, watching dad, watching coach to see how they're going to react to these situations.
And you're absolutely right. And you got to be prepared to the fact that you will not convert 100% of the people. There will be a chunk that, no, that's not for me, and they will realize what it is. But the minimum that happens when you have that systemic listening process is that those people will very quickly know that's not for them, or you will know that they're not for you. And that helps us maintain a balance of a culture that perpetuates itself because it self-selects for people that really want to do this well. And I think that's one of the great things about NPP. As we started getting companies like Eddie's and Hal's and Chad's, or a little culture that's forming from that is self-selecting for more of that. So now I don't have to put an effort to go select something because it automatically attracts the right type of people. Now we saw this today in our announcement. We're talking to employees and you talk to the people who see that that's the culture that we want. That's the culture we want to have. The conversation was super easy, right? We got questions. People want to know, hey, what? But we didn't get questions. Hey, what you going to do about this? As if there was something wrong. The questions were all about, and this has always called my attention in every single announcement we did in Hal's and Eddie's. It's not about how you're going to fix something that's broken. It's how you're going to make this better. And that's the mindset of the technician that's cleaning the pool. The people we're meeting, they're not worried about, oh, this is all screwed up and you got to go that way. They're saying, well, we like this, but now we can do this much more. Tell me about that. Mm-hmm. And I've heard that in every single announcement that I've been, doing to the techs. And that's incredibly energizing because we've got a winning team when people care about what you can do, not what you did wrong.
Right.
When we keep talking about this labor shortage of people and, this investing in the front line and the people that are going to service pools is a big piece of that, right? Like if you are hiring people and treating them like a peon, they're not going to be around. Like, you bring them into something like this, then they have an opportunity to grow it with the company and advance in the company. That's how people get kept in the industry, and that's how they see an attractive opportunity, right?
And we're seeing the excitement. It all three of the announcements that I've been to, one in Fort Lauderdale, one in Austin, and today in Phoenix. It is the overwhelming emotion is excitement at opportunity. It's like, tell me about all these new positions that are going to come about. How do I get them? When are these jobs going to be posted? Can I keep my job and move to another city? It's,
Right.
Everybody is immediately identifying and grasping onto the opportunity that's being presented, and it's been super fun to watch.
And I think the good owners, like everybody in this room, really does care about the employees. So we had that piece of it. We did our best to take care of them, but it just opens up so many more doors, like you're saying, than you can't provide without capital or opportunity. So it's really cool that you guys are.
Yeah, if you look at turnover, right? Pool technician turnover is pretty much synonymous as a high turnover rate.
Right.
And if you look at that, I would have to attribute that a lot of that is because of the lack of career progression.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the amount of knowledge drain that this industry faces just because of that.
Right.
When you have a tech, somebody that you train, they came from somewhere else, whatever it is, and they last 2 to 3 years, and then they exit the industry just because there's not a way for them to grow. They can't better their lives. They can't take on more responsibility. It's a shame to see that amount of knowledge leave the industry. They have so much potential, right? So I know we keep talking about this career path, career track. That to me, not only are we benefiting the employees, we're benefiting their families, we're benefiting the company, we're benefiting the customers, and we're benefiting the industry. I mean, it's a win-win all the way around.
That just made me think of a really cool instance in Austin that one of our cleaners in Austin wants to be an accountant, but he loves his job right now. He loves the pool industry. And after the announcement, he called in to specifically ask, like, wait a second, if I finish my schooling and become an accountant, can I be an accountant for NPP and stay in the industry? And like, just that idea that you can stay in the industry that you love with a skill set that normally would pull you out of this industry.
Exactly.
Has been a really cool thing
Right.
to see.
Yeah, and Eddie, you said earlier, not everybody's meant for management. Like, not everybody's meant to own a company either. And I think there's a lot of people in this industry that got pissed off at their boss and started their own company, but don't know how to run a company. We've talked about that in several different podcasts, but this gives them the opportunity. They also probably exit at one point because they get tired of dealing with the crap and they don't want to be a business owner anymore, and then they leave and go do something else. So this opportunity, if you sell to NPP rather than leave, maybe you have an opportunity now to be a management piece or do something that you like doing instead of just saying peace,
Right.
out.
Gives them an opportunity to stay in the business and yet not have to deal with the owning of the business.
Yep.
Yeah, well
That's so
said.
cool.
And get paid along the way for it.
Yeah.
There you go.
And sometimes owning, you don't get paid.
When I was,
So, wait, you guys got paid?
see, people have ambitions, right? And you need to understand that they're going to be different and varied. Some people will want to grow. Some people would say, just give me a better way to do my job, right? But when we were doing the announcement of the sale at Hal's company, we talked to everyone and we hang back to talk to people individually. So one of his techs comes to me and looks at me and says, "What do I need to do to get your job?"
Wow.
That was,
Bam, right to it.
The interesting thing was he was not kidding.
No.
He was not, oh, yeah, I'm going to make a joke. He wanted to know, hey, and actually it was interesting. A 20-minute conversation about, hey, from here, you got to start leading people and understanding the people side of the business. Then you got to get preparation for this. Then you got to do this. And it was interesting because I educated myself in terms to try to describe to him what are the steps you need to take. And that's when I saw exactly what Hal was talking about. How now you can see this thread going, from where you are to my job, right? Because my goal is to pass it on to every time I got someone who could do my job better than me. I've always got out better. It's a fact of life, right? So that's what I'm looking for. So it was cool to see that, and it's in people's minds. So the fact that people, oh yeah, this turnover, I'm here for 3 years, that's not necessarily true. They do that because they don't have an option. If you provide the option, you will have different reactions of people, and they'll raise to the occasion. I'll tell you that.
That's funny. I recently heard something on a podcast and somebody was asking, like, how do I build a company just like yours? And how do I become just like you? He's like, dude, it's pretty simple. You just got to put in 40 years, 7 days a week, 2 divorces, and, bounce back from a couple heart attacks.
Yeah, I was going to say heart attacks.
You should be good. He's like, are you serious? And he's like, it is pretty simple, but it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's just there's so much that goes into it. But that's pretty cool. Respect that you got somebody on your team that would show that type of initiative. Didn't ask for Hal's job. Asked for.
We want the top.
Go big or go home, right? But it was cool. That's also speak to the type of transparency we want to have in the company, right? Companies where you have high degrees of transparency, problems don't linger and they don't fester, right? So companies that worry about just keeping harmony instead of truth, they suffer because problems hide and you don't address them. So when you get people that come to you and say, what you going to do about my W-2? I got questions today. Oh, I'm a 1099. How am I going to move over to that thing? If people don't feel confident, they can ask me how I'm going to move from a 1099 to W-2 and what's going to happen to my take home. And, go ask the CEO that question. So I'm not asking my buddy here. I'm going to the CEO and I feel confident I can go do. I have trust. And that environment of trust is fundamental for the front line to feel that they're in command of what they do. And that's critical. That we're building. That's part of the culture we're building.
So what is NPP's overall vision for the industry? I know we've talked a lot about different things, but just kind of the overall vision.
We like to say that our vision is to elevate the industry, right? It's lofty words that, elevate the industry. But ultimately, we want to unlock value. So looking at the industry and how things are done today and learning from the industry how you can do the same things in a way that's more valuable for the employee, for the customer, and for the companies that are there. There's this old paradigm in which if you take care of your employees, it's going to come off profit. And it's not a true paradigm. I've experienced it in other industries. If you take and invest in your employees, you will get a number of times that back as profit and customer retention. You may not get that cash flow right away, but the value over time gets built and it's very solid. So one of the key visions for us when we talk about elevating the industry is finding all these pockets of value that may come in how efficiently can I run a route, how better equipped my techs can be from the choices of trucks that I use that are adequate for the height of my employees so that they don't have to struggle to get a bucket of, all those things play into these little pockets of value that we need to unlock, right? So that's one thing. The other element of elevated industry is professionalization. How do we take talent and make talent first recognize itself as talent and then make that talent formatted in a way that is recognized as talent by the industry. So that's how you elevate the people. So you
Why is that important? That seemed I haven't heard anybody say that. Is that to instill confidence in somebody?
Yeah. It plays on the confidence side because you know you are valued. In service, a lot of companies make the mistake that they ask their technicians to take great care of their customers, yet they don't treat them well. How can you expect a child that never experienced love to love someone? It's the same thing with service. If you don't treat people well, how can you expect that person to treat someone else? So that sometimes forces you to make that person believe and understand that they're a valued professional. And that requires skill, it requires training. And those investments are important for people to feel confident in terms of what they're doing. I can't tell you how many times a tech came in and called and said, look, they gave me a week training and gave me a truck, and I'm 21 years old. I've never driven a truck this big. I'm going out trying to solve problems I never solved before. And I actually, by the way, I called my manager 3 times and I can't talk to him. And I'm here, and the customer's looking at me right now. That is very deflating. That hits talent right in their self-esteem. They get 3 of those, they come home, they drop the keys.
Yeah, you're set up for total failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't realize this. If you just run the math, every time you hire and lose an employee, in the process of hiring, training, inducting, an employee decides that that's not what they want to do, and then they quit. If we've measured this in other industries, it costs the equivalent of 3 months full pay to go over that process. So in an industry like ours, you're talking about 10 grand, 12 grand every time you hire and lose an employee. Yet some people won't invest a third of that to properly train or give assets to people or resources. Even the math is upside down, right? That's why you say, so when you professionalize people, to give them people the tools, the confidence that they can deal with all the problems, they transmit that confidence over to the customer. It ends up in building longer term relationships. That customer is not going to cancel, right? Because then if you look at the cost to acquire a customer, which is also probably about a year's worth of profit, that's what you pay to get a customer, at least. So if you're losing 10% of your customers in a month, just run the math. You have to work the rest of the year just to pay for that, right? So all these little components of the profitability all has correspondence in terms of how you treat your people and how you treat your customers, right? So that professionalization is one of the pillars to make sure that we shield our operations from the lack of confidence or lack of self-esteem that some of the techs can have because they just believe that they're the less of trades. And we need to make sure people recognize that value, right? So in the first bite, we found the value, that unlocked value. Second, we professionalize people, right? And then the other element is, okay, to elevate the industry, we aggregate. That's why we're buying companies of a certain profile. Because when you have a certain critical mass, you can devote capital to all these elements that sustain that growth, right? Because as I said, some of the business haven't evolved, not because they don't have the idea or the people are not good. People are good, they have the ideas, just don't have the time, don't have the capital, right? So now I got all these opportunities and value, I got talented people, and I got the backing of capital and time for people to actually do this. That's what we kind of mean by elevating the industry.
It's so crazy because that's exactly what it is. I feel like we hit a wall with our company, and it's just that wall kept getting bigger and bigger, and you're just trying to find stuff to climb up it, and it just seems like you're never going to get over that wall or that hump.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, right? And it sometimes kills incredible ideas or demotivates incredible talent. And I've seen that happen. And so, or if we're able to enable the front line, enable people to just do what they do or love well, that in itself is tremendous unlocker of value.
Yeah. And I think, you're talking about aggregating, and we talked last night about how that can make a difference for the entire industry as a whole. Can you talk about that? How I know you're passionate about that piece of it, because, it's, people may perceive this as a bad thing, that they're going to come in and try to take their businesses. But really what it does is it unleashes more opportunity, and it also elevates the industry. But by doing that, the ones that want to keep their own businesses and want to run their own businesses will also be elevated, because it's going to bring all kinds of new opportunity throughout the industry, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's several points to hit on that. And one, even I think just in like the way you phrase that of like take their businesses, like, yeah, we want to buy your business. We want to reward you for what you've built, right? Which is a system that there's not been a lot of outlets to achieve that in our industry in the past. But, more than that, I think the level of professionalization and bringing new education curriculum and higher wages and benefits and the things that we're aiming to do at the NPP level should raise the bar across the industry in terms of the type of talent that is attracted to come work in this industry. I know growing up, I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be a pool guy, right? Most people don't. A lot of us just sort of fell into this industry, but we can shape something that is attractive to people where, they will be drawn to this industry in a way that they haven't been prior, because they'll see career opportunities that have never existed here before, that they could only find elsewhere. And that moves on to not only attracting talent, but as we professionalize, we'll be able to justify, and as we educate our customers, we'll be able to justify higher pricing, right? As pricing in a market rises, it's going to impact every small independent company in that region too, if they're paying attention and sort of, carrying their own water to notice and account for it and raise their prices accordingly. Right. There's several ways that, a consolidated player or multiple consolidated players in this industry can absolutely benefit, even the independent one polar. But there is responsibility that lies with that independent business owner to pay attention. Right. And take advantage of what's happening industry-wide. They can't necessarily expect that it's going to be taken care of for them. They need to be watching and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I recently saw a video by Simon Sinek, and it's a very interesting one, but he says there's 5 things companies need to succeed, and 2 of them, one is that you have to have a just cause, and the second one is you have to have a worthy opponent. I'm very sure we have a just cause, all the things we were talking about so far. But if I can become the worthy opponent by doing all these things, and someone else on the other side decides, you know what, we're going to do the same thing NPP is going to do. And be it one polar or be it a larger company, and I'm going to live up to that standard and raise the bar on us and challenge us, NPP, to even get even better. You can start to see the virtuous cycle that could come from that by us becoming worthy opponents to each other, and in the process of doing that, raising the whole industry.
Mm-hmm.
You can't play a game without a worthy opponent.
Right.
And that is what we're becoming right now. And I'll tell you, other people are raising their games right away. We're already seeing that. We are, by certain of the things we've done, we forced other companies to actually, price was one, but other approaches are changing already because of what statements we made in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that things will go on the right, not go to the dark side, it will go to the bright side, and everyone's going to kind of raise the bar on each other, and this whole thing is going to become better.
Well, back to the Terminix thing. I mean, them and two competitors own most of that business in that industry, but there's still many successful pest control companies that are not Terminix.
Absolutely.
Right?
In fact, our own PE is investing in that portion of the market, consolidating at a different level, right? Because there's a role for every layer and every player in an industry. If you take the pest control, for example, as you're just mentioning, the two players, the largest players, control about $4 billion of a $9 billion industry. But there's innumerous $100 million players, and there's innumerous players that are individuals that actually do pest control.
Mm-hmm.
And that dynamic is never going to change.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be a certain level of aggregation. And the interplay between these layers is very important, because certain layers maintain the value and the price, certain layers advanced technology, and each one kind of is responsible for one element of how this industry evolves. And if all three layers are strong, the whole industry progresses, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think we're doing. I think we're adding a layer to pool that is going to challenge everyone, but bring everyone along.
Right. I think the reason I bring it up because there's two different ways that somebody can go if they own their own business. They can see it as a great opportunity for the industry, or they can hate it. And I think, seeing it as a great opportunity is the right path, because as you said, how you do have to pay attention and then gradually, raise your prices, make yourself more professional. There's a lot of pieces to that individual that has to compete with an NPP, but, you can see it as a good thing regardless of whether you sell your business or not. It's there.
Right.
So.
And I can tell you as far as selling your business, because one thing I noticed with pest control, because I think we talked about this last time I was in here, that I was eyeing the idea of starting a pest control company in Austin. Yeah. And the reason I was doing that, and what I'd observed, is pest control companies are valued much, much more highly historically than pool service companies. And the reason for that is because they're qualified buyers for your company, right? There's these large corporations that are looking to buy. And as a result, over the last 30 years or so, valuations on pest control companies have gone up drastically, right? And inevitably, that's something that will occur in this industry as well, as more qualified buyers are created looking to purchase these small independent companies.
Yeah, and it gives them an out at some point. Even if you want to run a company for 30 years, it still gives you an out that wasn't available 5 years ago.
A pool company owner today
ago
that plans on running it for the next 15 years, just by NPP existing, we're creating value for that pool company owner on what their exit will look like in 15 years when they do want to sell.
Yep.
So where is NPP now, and where do you guys see this in the future?
So NPP is, our first phase out of the gate was to actually focus on platform companies, right? So what are the companies that are going to actually form our culture and the way we're going to operate? Because that was very important. Becoming who we are, as I said before, is a combination of the people we bring to the fold. So we wanted to first complete this first phase. Who are the leaders that are going to be the hubs upon which we're going to create all this development, right? So that was very important for us, to get a critical mass, but of a certain quality, a certain type of companies, right? With that, we have enough of an existence to actually start pulling other companies that might have to say, hey, I'd like to be part of that. I can now recognize what NPP is as an entity that I can see how it works, right? Because 6 months ago, we were a concept, right? You can sell a concept much easier than you can sell a reality. Now we're a reality. We're here. We exist, and people can look at us, judge us, and say, hey, you know what? I'd like to be part of that. So I think that's our next phase where hey, guys, look at us. This is how we do things. We're a worthy opponent. You can decide to join us or go your own way and make the industry better as we do. And I think that second phase is going to be important to get to even larger critical mass that will enable even more things to happen, right? Our goal is, and I was saying this today to the employees, I don't want to be the biggest pool cleaning company. I want to be the best one. So we're going to strive to be the best pool company in all elements of quality you can think, right? The company that treats their people the best, the company that has the best quality of profit, the company that's recognized by the customers as being the best. And all of that reputation has to be built not for NPP, but through the companies that are the face of NPP to the customers, which are all the brands that are represented here today. So that's kind of our ultimate goal, right? Let's be super clear. We're trying to create value that has monetary value at the end of the day. But we're not trying to create profit. We're trying to create value. Something that companies that are using to buy and pay 30 multiples for a pest control company look at this as, wow, these guys got it down. And I value them as much as I would value some other business, right? So that's our ultimate goal. Because once you get to that value, you don't even have to sell. Just getting to that moment where you are worth this money, the world rewards you accordingly. And that's very important. But you have to create a quality company. Now, I think we will end up being the largest, but not by trying to be the largest. We're going to be the largest by trying to be the best.
Love it.
And let me add in just at a very concrete level too, to give clarity as to what we look like today and what we want to look like in the near future. So currently we are in 3 states. Our brand, we will grow, or our brands, we're looking to grow across the Sun Belt. And as we go into new markets, right? So first we do have to find a business that is of substantial enough size that it has the infrastructure we need, whether it's people, infrastructure, organizational infrastructure, that we know we can open up a new market and do it well, and being able to have local management, but also supervise it from afar without having to be in it daily in an overbearing capacity, right? So we go into a new market, we do need a very large company at first. After we've opened that market, then we can look to acquire, mid-sized companies, other large companies, down to routes, right? But it is very important for us that as we enter new markets, we find a company of the size that there's sustainability there that can be grown on top of. And so that's something we're still looking for right now. We have a handful of markets where we have that organizational infrastructure in place because we've acquired it. But there's still plenty of markets across the Sun Belt where we're looking specifically for that. And so it's really a tiered approach as we open up new cities.
Very cool. Well, this is certainly a really good conversation, guys. Thanks again for coming down. We really appreciate it. How can people find more information if they're looking to do so?
So our website is go-npp.com.
What was it?
It's go-npp.com. And you can
don't spell dash, right?
Yeah. Hyphen. Go hyphen. There we go. And so you can learn more about us there.
Yeah, and I think all of our contact information, everything's there. So it's very easy to get to and get a hold of us.
We have a chief business development officer who carries all the relationships with potential transactions that we have. His name is Justin Cooperberg. He can be found through that website as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, we appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you guys very much for the time. Enjoyed the conversation.
Hey, Pool Chasers. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode. To connect with today's guests, including pictures, links, and resources from everything discussed today, you can visit the episode page at poolchasers.com or click the links below. To connect more with us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching at Pool Chasers. If you would like to support the podcast, the easiest and most effective way is to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as share the show or your favorite episode with a friend or on social media. Also, you can get early access to each episode by supporting us through Patreon. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for sharing some of yours with us today.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.